Hello. Hi, it's Haley. Welcome to another not bookish video. This is a very personal video. I also think it's a very important video for me to make. I've been feeling pulled to open up about this more now that it's been about almost a year since I initiated asking for a divorce with my ex-husband. And I talked about it a little bit in my Q&A. And just reading the comments and going back and forth with you guys, I think this is important for me to talk about. I have a few goals for this video as to why I'm making it. I want to share my story with getting a divorce super young and not being married for that long, to hopefully try to reach other women or other people who might need to hear it, who might see themselves in my circumstances, in my situation, and relate to the past version of me that was really struggling and feeling so helpless and really blaming myself. If there's anyone that I can reach and possibly help with this, that would be super gratifying to me. But beyond that, I also want to dismantle some of the modern myths, I would say, around marriage and relationships. As a licensed therapist, I hear a lot of different weird perceptions about modern relationships, and I would like to address them and also let you know I'm not going to be speaking from a place of professionalism in this video. Obviously, I have my training and my licensing and my knowledge, and I can't just turn that off. First and foremost, I'm going to be sharing from a place of personal experience, and even having all of the mental health and relationship knowledge that I do, I fell into some of the black and white thinking, sunk cost fallacy, different myths and narratives about relationships, and it kept me stuck for so long. I want to try to challenge some of those things, and I want to share my story, and I hope this can reach anyone who needs to hear it. My goal for this video is not to dox my ex-husband in any way, to blame him in any way. I don't want him to even know that this video exists. He is not a bad person. I don't wish him any hate, and I really want you guys to respect his privacy. If you somehow dig up his name, which I won't be mentioning in this video for a reason, just know that that would be really weird of you. Like, you would have to go out of your way to do that, and I don't know why you would do that. We are both in separate happy relationships to my knowledge at this point. I do not wish him any harm or criticism. Let's not harass him or take it out on him, please. We are past this. So far past this. So now that you know my goals for this video, I want to start out with my raw emotional experience. The morning after the night that I asked my previous partner for a divorce, I woke up and I was feeling so much. I just had to get it out, and I sat down and I filmed myself talking about it for over an hour. I cut it down to the most essential pieces of what I was feeling in that moment, but I want you guys to be able to see the place that I was in. If you relate to it, maybe seeing this will give you some kind of understanding for yourself. So I feel like I need to give a disclaimer for this next part of the video. This is me at my most raw and vulnerable state. I look horrible. I felt disgusting. Just like, viewer discretion advised moving forward. The next 6-ish minutes of this video are gonna be really, really emotional. But just to show you guys the state that I was in at this time when I was leaving my relationship last summer. Okay, here we are. Here we fucking are. This is genuinely the weirdest thing I've ever done. It just feels like it's trapped in here. So I want to get it out here. I don't know if this is anything I'll ever post. Last night I told my husband that I want a divorce. Yeah, it's a mix, you know? I feel guilty saying this, but like the second I said that, I felt so free and I felt so much relief. But I also feel like a failure. Like, I'm so scared of how people are gonna judge me. I just feel like people won't understand. I don't know how people will respond, but I know that this is the best thing for me, and that's really confusing. And I don't really feel like I need a justifiable reason, but I have one. It's not like I'm doing this for no reason, you know? The best way that I can describe it is like borrowing words that my therapist used, which really struck me, which is that I, for so long, needed to value being safe and having someone consistent, that I let that take precedence over feeling fulfilled and feeling alive. Because that's what I've been missing, in my body, and my nervous system has just been screaming out to me for, if I'm being totally honest, like years, that this is not the right relationship for me. I feel like I gaslit myself. Like I feel like I told myself that it was me. Like I feel like I told myself like there's something wrong with you, that you can't just stay with this person forever. Like there's nothing wrong in the relationship, so you should be able to stay. But like, why? It shouldn't be that hard, you know? It shouldn't be fighting every single day. The like natural ease is what I'm looking for. And I think it also complicates things that I got into this relationship so early. I'm a different person. I'm totally different. I didn't even know who I was at 18. And I think that's why I gaslit myself and told myself like, no, it's something wrong with you. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You fucked up girl. You wanted to marry this man and now he wants to marry you and he bought you this beautiful ring of your dreams and you're having a panic attack. Like, you need to get it together. There's something wrong with you. And I don't think it was something wrong with me. I really don't. I wish I could go back and tell myself that there's nothing wrong with me. And the truth is, like, people shift and people change, especially in this time, this age, you know? And I don't think I allowed myself to do that. I think I felt so much shame that I started having doubts. And I thought that I was the problem, and I became like so consumed with hiding it from everyone. My body was fighting me every step of the way. I had the panic attack when I found out about the proposal. Wedding planning was so hard for me. Like, yes, because it's a wedding and it's stressful and it's expensive and it's this huge event or whatever. But also because like it was paralyzing. I was paralyzed with fear and anxiety because this whole time, y'all, like I can't even express to the extent, like I literally thought I was the problem. I so deeply thought I was the problem. I was like, it's my commitment issues. My like freaking out, that's the problem in the relationship. When really like, no, that was the information. That was the valuable information about how this relationship is. My moods felt so inconsistent and how I would go into hypomania like so easily. Like I don't care about diagnostic labels. I don't think it really means anything about you at all. But I seriously, I never felt like this in my life. And all of a sudden I was like, was this just like a latent thing? And all of a sudden now I'm discovering like I'm fucking bipolar. Like, what's happening? And again, that's not a bad thing to be, but it was just so out of the blue and so jarring. Like, that was never how I had experienced the world and like life before. So I was like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, who am I? What's going on? And I had like so many freakouts. So many of my single friends were like immediately invalidating anytime I tried to open up about how I was feeling, because they were so blinded by the fact that like they wanted a ring so bad. They wanted to be in this committed relationship so bad that they couldn't even hear what I was saying to them. Why am I gonna blow my life up? That's the way that I would talk about it all the time in therapy to my friends who I could feel safe opening up to, even to my partner. I would say like, why would I blow my life up? Like, that's so stupid. I'm so stupid. I'm not gonna throw something away. I'm not gonna blow my life up. I want to tell anyone right now, if you feel like you're questioning blowing your life up, start to imagine and explore what that blowing up would be, because I pretty much can guarantee you blowing things up would be blowing things up logistically or for other people, and there's a reason why your system is leading you in the direction that it is. I don't think I had genuinely experienced what it was like to just be with myself, and care for myself until like March 2024. That's when I really started doing that. And everything shifted for me. Yeah, I started going to yoga every day, and that helped with my like sense of my body. And I started going to therapy every week and being honest with my therapist and like taking it very seriously. And that was so transformative. I fucking love my therapist. She's so fucking cool. I think she's so cool. I love her. And then all of a sudden, like, I just realized, like, this is me. Like, holy fuck, like, this is me. And I'm so cool. God, I'm fucking cool, you know? Like, I'm interesting and I'm smart and I'm kind and empathetic and all of these things. And it's like, fuck, like, that's me. And my relationship wasn't telling me that. My relationship was telling me that I was doing a lot wrong. Finally, I gave myself permission to just be who I fucking am. And I love who I am. I feel free. And like the only thing that's terrifying right now and like intimidating and feeling like too much is the logistics. Like the paying, I don't know what divorce, how much that fucking costs. I don't have that fucking money. I feel totally 100% confident saying I would feel so fulfilled in the rest of my life and my days if I never had another partner. I don't fucking need that, bro. I'm me and that fucking rocks. I'm not gonna shut myself off to connection. Like if that happens, cool. And I'm really excited to fully feel into my queerness because I wasn't out of the closet until I was already in a relationship. It's just, it gets to be so present now. Like everything gets to be for me, which sounds like really selfish and I kind of feel guilty about it, but this is all new. This is how I feel. That was a lot. Yeah, that was a lot. So now we will get into the why, the title of this video. Why did I file for divorce so young in my 20s, right after I got married? Like I was married for technically not even 3 months. Yeah, that's a whole thing we'll get into in a second. So why did that happen? First and foremost, I want to give you some background on my relationship. I met my ex-husband when I was a freshman in college. I was 18 years old, and I think a huge part of the breakdown of our relationship was that I was not the person that I am now and the person that I'm going to be when I entered this relationship. And looking back, there were many, many points throughout my growth and development as an individual within the relationship where I had inklings and I had signs that this person no longer matched up what I needed in a partner, and I ignored them. If there's one thing that I could go back and tell myself in those moments, it is do not ignore your emotions. Do not ignore these signs from your body and from your nervous system. Yourself is trying to tell you something. It is important. Listen to it. There were 3 major points when those signs emerged for me, and I made a concerted effort to ignore them. And I don't think I would have been able to tell you that I was making that concerted effort to be so avoidant at the time. However, now I can see with fresh eyes that I was just way too overwhelmed and I wasn't ready to be with those signs that my system was giving me. The first point that I can remember having an inkling that I should have left the relationship was 2 years in. I was still in college and the relationship was serious and long-term, obviously 2 years, but still kind of new. It was right after our 2nd anniversary and we had taken a trip, and I swear to you, this was the trip from hell. It was cursed, it was horrid. I went into the trip literally thinking I had a perfect relationship. I had a thought actually early in the day before we left for the trip, and I think I told my mom this at the time, of like, everything is perfect, everything is great. Honestly, at this point, I would consider building a future and marrying this person. And that was when I started to feel really, really solid. So the fact that these signs came so soon after, I think it was just so overwhelming for me that I just came to this nice settled conclusion, and it was so quickly followed by doubt. Basically, what happened at this point was on this trip, my ex-partner told me some things. You know, I think when you're in a long-term relationship, there are these points where your partner drops bombs on you. You know, you have these points of like, whoa, that's a big piece of information and I need to reckon with that, you know, which is an understandable thing. When someone shares something really intense, that takes a minute to land for their partner. And I was trying to take the minute for this piece of information to land on me. And then I got another one. And then I got another one. And then I got another one. And it was like all of this trauma dumping on me that had been hidden, completely intentionally hidden from me for 2 years. And when this was shared with me and I was taking a beat just to like let it land and let the shock register and try to understand what this meant for me and my relationship that I had just felt so settled with, the response that I got from my partner was criticism and defensiveness. He did not have any level of understanding or provide me with any space to reckon with these huge things that he had told me. And I immediately took from his defensiveness and his criticism of me that I was the problem. I wish that I would have taken a pause and said, you know, it's understandable that it takes me a little bit being told these huge pieces of information, but that is not what happened. I took that criticism that he gave me so seriously. I blamed myself. I felt guilty and I felt horrible for not responding in the way that he needed me to. Looking back, I shouldn't have ignored that hesitancy. I wish that I spent a little bit longer with my own feelings rather than rushing to quell his emotion and his defenses. That was my first sign that something was wrong. Okay, something wasn't landing right with me. And unfortunately, because of the way that both of our patterns, my people-pleasing, self-blame, and avoidance, and his defensiveness and criticism interacted in that moment, it kind of set the stage for me to have these signs come up from my body and continually ignore them in the future. The next point of having a big sign show up for me that I ignored, that I wish that I didn't, was about 5 years into the relationship, and I knew that my partner was planning on proposing to me. And at this point, we had grown up a lot from being 20 years old and still in college. We were starting our adult lives together, and I did feel settled in the relationship again and ready to commit to something. I knew in the back of my mind that we were talking about these greater plans and settling down, and I felt okay about that. However, I did end up coming across the engagement ring, which he hid not very well in our apartment.
You know, if I'm the woman who does the laundry and puts the laundry away, I don't think the best hiding place for an engagement ring is in a sock drawer where the laundry would be put after I folded it.
But honestly, I'm glad that he did hide it so shoddily, because I found this ring and I had a panic attack. I've only had a few panic attacks in my life, and I remember thinking I was gonna have a heart attack. I remember thinking I need to go to the hospital. I need to call 911. I mean, my body went into full-blown panic mode. And I really wish if I could go back that I would have sat with that response and been curious and wondered, you know, what is my system trying to tell me? What would have brought out such a huge panic response? But instead, because the stage had been set and this pattern had been reinforced, I blamed myself. I felt so deeply ashamed that I freaked out over this idea of commitment. I internalized this idea that I was the problem, that I had commitment issues. And I started that self-gaslighting that I referenced a couple times in that morning after clip, where I was telling myself, you know, you have someone who's willing to commit to you. What is wrong with you that you won't accept that? This is what you've been wanting, this idea of future and settling down. If you're having a panic attack, you're crazy. Also, I think it's important to talk about logistical aspects here for myself and for a lot of clients that I work with in my practice. When you start considering a breakup and divorce, what I hear most about, and what was a big concern for me in the moment as well, is the logistical aspects, like finances, like living situation, like the splitting up of dogs and kids and custody and all that. Usually when we're thinking about leaving a relationship, at least in my experience personally and professionally, those are the things that we're most worried about. The bigger emotion we don't have capacity for, that has to be grieved and let out over time. I was consumed with the logistics at that point, one of them being that we lived together and I was in grad school and I could not afford to live where I was living on my own. And I was overwhelmed with the idea about moving and blowing up my life while in the midst of grad school, where I was learning how to do my career, where I felt very intensely. And so I think I fell into what's called the cohabitation effect. I heard about this by reading this book actually in grad school, The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. Highly recommend this for anyone in their 20s. If you're anywhere from 20 to 30, it has so much valuable information in there. One of the most valuable pieces for me was finding out about the cohabitation effect. And this is where, due to logistical, financial circumstances, you end up just slipping into living with your partner. And this is actually a predictor of breakup, of the failing of the relationship, of divorce, because it lacks intention. When two people move in together, that is a huge step in a relationship. And it should be made not from a logistical place, but from an emotional place, or else the emotion and the connection of the relationship will suffer. I definitely fell into that slippery slope of just wanting the easiest path of least resistance to the life that I wanted. So we just slid into living with each other without really talking about what that meant, and without me, again, examining how my body felt when I moved in with him. I was super on edge. I started to have sleep issues. I started to have huge flares of my PCOS and endometriosis. I didn't put any of these pieces together at the time, even though I literally read The Defining Decade in grad school, probably the month before or the month after I had this panic attack. I was reading about the cohabitation effect, not even realizing that it was happening to me. So that was the second huge waving red flag that I missed from my own body. The last one, that was really the most obvious one, goes back to the discrepancy that I referenced earlier in how long I was actually married for. Most people probably think I was married for 8-9 months because of when my wedding was, but actually I did not sign my marriage certificate on my wedding day. Something in me told me don't. And I refused to for months after that. That resistance and that avoidance was such good information for me. I wish if I could go back that I would have seen that for what it was and honored it. But honestly, in the moment, I was doing the same thing that had been following the pattern from that first moment of rupture, which was blaming myself, telling myself that I was being stubborn and I was being avoidant and I was being a horrible partner and I was being a bitch by not committing to this person who wanted to commit to me. When in reality, that resistance and that avoidance was just a sign and a signal that clearly the relationship was not serving me. And there was some resistant part of me that showed up so huge, telling me, do not do this. I wish I could have understood that part for what it was rather than blaming myself. I think those 3 points where the self-gaslighting began, when I had the panic attack and when I was super resistant to sign the marriage certificate, those are the 3 moments that I wish I could go back and attend to myself better if I could redo everything over again. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, and it did get to the point where my partner was saying the marriage license was going to expire if I didn't sign it. He put a lot of pressure on me. I did end up signing it when I was inebriated, and there was some light threatening around financial aspects because I was the breadwinner. Things being said like, if this expires, you're gonna be the one that has to buy the next one, so why don't you just save yourself some money and sign the paper. So I ended up signing it, I believe the last week of May of 2024. And then I did end up leaving my relationship not 2 months later. But I think my blind spots in not seeing these warning signs are really, really good information. I really prompt you, if you relate to any of this, to look inward and start noticing your warning signs. If you have been feeling red flags that you are blaming yourself for, now is the time to turn it around. Take a pause with yourself and notice what your body and your brain is trying to tell you. Rather than shaming yourself and ripping yourself apart for being a bad partner or a bad woman or a bad feminist or whatever you are calling yourself, take a step back and just interpret the sign from your body. If you are panicking, you're probably scared. If you are resistant, you're probably feeling unsafe. Take that for what it is rather than creating a narrative of self-blame about you. I truly believe that if I were able to do that at the time, I wouldn't have gotten married and then I wouldn't have had to file for divorce in my 20s and leave a marriage that hadn't even hit 90 fucking days. I don't know. I literally had a Kim K marriage. And you know what? I get her. I get her. Maybe Kim was in the same position. I don't know. Next up, I want to get into some other myths about modern relationships. I think these myths also contributed to me ignoring these warning signs. The first myth is that opening your relationship, having a threesome, or exploring in other type of way could possibly help you feel more settled with your current partner. And for some people, this might be totally valid and totally true. No hate on polyamory. I love polyamorous people. I support it. I get it. I love it. It's totally valid. But for me, in the context of my relationship, especially as a bisexual woman with a straight man, I felt like there were a lot of narratives working against me, and I don't believe that opening my relationship was the right choice at the time. I think that me even wanting to explore that was a warning sign in itself. I reached a point leading up to the wedding that I felt I truly could not go on unless I got some other needs met that weren't being addressed within my relationship. When I told my partner, he was defensive as usual, also pretty shaming and critical to me, as was typical, that, you know, I was wanting too much or I had too many needs, I was needy, I was dramatic, I was over the top, I was too much. All of those narratives were so big. No wonder I was self-gaslighting so badly. And I was completely desperate to get these needs met regardless of the narratives that were going on about me. So I told him that opening the relationship might do that for me. It was a roundabout way to get my needs met. I was just desperate for any kind of connection that I could get, even if that was sex with random people. And that, honestly, for a while, filled the void. This part of the video literally has me feeling like James Charles in his apology video where he was like,
"You guys, I was desperate."
That is literally my only excuse. It's like I was fucking desperate to get my needs met. And when I started feeling like my needs were at least getting met halfway, or, you know, maybe an emotional need wasn't getting met, but the void was filled by a physical need getting met, then I started to disengage completely from my partner. And I know he felt this. So no, opening the relationship unfortunately did not work for us. If your partner suggests this, I would highly recommend, before engaging with it, that you understand the place that this is coming from. And I think this has to be done on an individual basis, right? People have to go inside and look for themselves to know where that's coming from, because my partner couldn't have known where that was coming from for me. I was telling him about the desperation that I was feeling, but he didn't understand it, and I didn't have better words to describe it because I was so avoidant that I wasn't willing to really be with those cues and understand the depth of them. So no, it didn't work for me. And if I could go back, I wish I could have felt that impulse to explore extra relationship connections. And rather than thinking, oh, I just need to open my relationship, I wish that I would have said, oh, maybe I just don't want to be with this person anymore. The next piece of the puzzle that I want to talk about here has to do with imbalances in a relationship. And I think there are plenty healthy compatible relationships where partners have imbalances on different things. Obviously, the stereotypical heteronormative dynamic of the dude does all of the financial winning, and there's a very severe imbalance for the women's financials versus the women having high emotional intelligence and the men maybe lacking in that respect. That can work for people. That has worked for so many people's grandparents and parents, and I'm not going to invalidate any of those relationships. They could be totally loving and wonderful, and if that works for you, rock with it. However, I don't know if that is true in all cases. And I think you should look at these imbalances with a really critical eye. I don't think it always works out, even if they're non-traditional imbalances. Obviously, the heteronormative dynamic that I just talked about, we can very easily probably imagine a scenario where that imbalance is not going to play out well. I thought that I was protected by having a non-heteronormative imbalance within my relationship. I was the breadwinner. I was the one that was paying to take us out, to take us on vacations. I was supporting my partner. I paid off so much of his debt that was hidden from me. But I wasn't being met in any other way. And that takes a toll. At the end of the day, Barbie cannot be everything and he can just be Ken. There is just, that doesn't ever work. The toll that it takes when you outpace your partner financially, emotionally, physical needs wise, labor in the home wise, and time you have available to spend with them wise, it cannot be overstated. And we didn't approach those imbalances in any way with any intention. I found myself as the breadwinner, which I thought was very empowering, but really was very draining, because when I was the breadwinner, he wasn't picking up the slack at home. I was the sole person that cooked and cleaned and maintained the home, paid all the bills, took care of things like vet appointments for the dogs and maintenance requests for the apartment. And I also, even though I was doing all of those things and balancing those things, had more emotional space, more physical space, and more quality time to spend with my partner because I intentionally made sure that I had those resources available. He never met that point of imbalance, and I didn't have the language at the time to even ask him to. I think subconsciously we both knew that there was a deficit in many categories where I was picking up a lot of slack and he wasn't showing up. I know that he felt shameful, self-defeating about those things, but we didn't do any intentional repair around those deficits, and that led to the breakdown of the relationship over time. I really tried to do that repair and fix those imbalances, but I was already the one carrying the weight. When you are basically met with a defensive wall, it's impossible to repair those imbalances alone. If you feel like you are fighting for that balance alone, it's never going to change. That balance is probably never going to happen for you. Both people have to be intentional in repairing that deficit. I literally felt like, you guys, I felt like if I didn't tell him what to do exactly with all the steps listed out, it wouldn't get done. And that was the only way that I could get any help with any of those categories. And what I was coming up against here isn't just like man-child syndrome. Like, I feel like that's such a modern myth about men, is like, oh, he's just a man-child. Oh, he just never learned how to do this shit. It wasn't that. What I was coming up against, if we take a lens of empathy and understanding, was his wall of shame, of freeze, of helplessness, and his inability to cope with the imbalances that presented in our relationship. The messages from toxic masculinity told him that the place that he had got himself to makes him worthless, and he felt the helplessness of that. I think writing off a partner as a man-child really just does you and them a disservice. There's nothing you can do to repair man-child syndrome, but there is a way to repair and come back from someone's defenses. If he was able to see and name his shame, his helplessness, his defensiveness, the freeze and immobility that he was stuck in, and resolved to work on that, and that was the way that we found that balance again, maybe something would have changed. But at the point that we were in, the relationship was never going to change. I wish that I could have seen that. Instead of just resenting him for being a man-child, I really do regret that. And a book that really helped me learn the context for some of this stuff is All About Love by Bell Hooks. She goes into generationally how we learn about love, how that varies based on misogyny. That was a huge part of the book that really opened my eyes. It's really reductive to just call a man a man-child and move on. It kind of plays into toxic masculinity by reducing a man to his worth in output, when really we need to be looking at generational trauma and how we raise boys and girls within the patriarchy intentionally so we have a healthy understanding of what love is. If you are questioning your relationship and if you have unconditional love, please read All About Love. I want to do a whole video on this book and what I learned. If you guys want to see that, let me know down below. I absolutely love it, and it's super valuable with these concepts. If you're hearing me and feeling like it's not really clicking, if you're not clocking how I'm standing on business, okay, read this book and I promise it will start clicking for you. I think another modern myth about relationships or modern expectation is about weddings, okay? There's this whole idea of a dream wedding. At least me personally, I grew up with this dream idea of how I wanted my wedding to look. I grew up watching 4 Weddings and Say Yes to the Dress on TLC with my mom and grandma and just fantasizing about what my wedding would look like, to the point where when I got engaged, I was a million times more excited to have a wedding than I was to be in a marriage. And the wedding planning process did a number on my relationship. I think wedding planning is a really interesting microcosm of how the relationship dynamic is and how the relationship maintains itself. So if you are planning a wedding, maybe having doubts, maybe questioning, look at the planning process. I think that'll let you know the patterns that are paramount within your relationship. Because here's how my wedding planning process went. I did every single thing. The logistics, the meetings, the paying $80,000 for it. And I was completely exhausted. And I was not quiet about this, okay? I screamed it from the rooftops, letting him know this is exhausting and I need help. And what I got was him meeting me when I said that I needed help, but meeting me with criticism about how the things that I was doing were not right and the things that I had paid for were not ideal and the things that I spent hours on were some kind of issue would come up. At one point, we had planned on inviting about 135 people, but once I started seeing the amount that that was going to cost, I ended up cutting the guest list to 75, and that was a huge rupture. Instead of seeing that I could not handle the financial constraint of that, I was fielding calls from him and my ex-mother-in-law talking about I wasn't welcoming to their family and I wasn't inclusive of their extended family because I didn't want to pay for them to be there, when I had already cut out basically my mom's entire side of the family from the guest list at that point. That moment is the microcosm of my relationship. After the wedding planning process was over and the actual wedding day was done, I felt more comfortable. I felt like maybe I didn't make a grave mistake and maybe I could do this. I started feeling more heard by him, and he did end up starting therapy. So I felt like there was a point in time a couple months after our wedding where he was doing the individual work and I was too, taking that space for himself and kind of boosting his emotional intelligence and working harder to show up in the relationship gave me so much relief and so much space to actually show up for myself too. And I ended up going to yoga more, going to my own therapy more, really spending time with myself, getting to know myself and accepting myself so some of those self-blame narratives could go away. One thing I really regret about this is that it took his action finally coming to meet me for me to come to myself. I wish I could have just done that on my own rather than relying on him to start the work for me to feel okay to start my own personal work as well. And I say start my own personal work. I had been in therapy the entirety of our relationship. I had been trying to intentionally work on myself, but when you're giving so much to a partner and you're feeling that imbalance that I talked about earlier, God, it feels impossible to really make any strides. And when he did start therapy and he did start this work, honestly, it felt too little too late. Not because of anything to do with him, but because when I started doing my work, I started having these realizations that I could do it all on my own. That I had been doing it all on my own, not just for me, but for 2 people and 2 dogs. And I tasted how delicious that actually felt. That even though I had this idea that I was in a relationship and that was the thing that was guiding my life, I was the one holding that relationship together. I was independent even though I was in a partnership. I just couldn't see all the places where I was independent because of the narratives of self-blame and the defensiveness and stonewalling that told me I was doing everything wrong. And if you're wanting to read more about this topic, a book that I think does it really well is Women Living Deliciously by Florence Given. When I started to show up for myself, meet myself, accept myself, I realized how delicious my life actually was and how amazing and capable I actually am. Having those realizations was what gave me the courage and the strength to finally file for divorce. Now, I've talked about this self-gaslighting a lot through this video, and I want to go into that a lot more and talk about how shame, first of all, what shame is, but how shame and other external expectations and judgments contributed to me staying in this relationship that was unhealthy for me way longer than I should have. Something that I really try to teach my clients is that shame is not an internal emotional experience. Usually when we describe shame, it feels like something being placed onto us. It feels like something heavy, something that we want to get out of and shake off. And if we lived in a vacuum on our own, we would never experience shame. Shame is different from guilt and regret. That comes from inside us, right? We have that internal monologue, that internal sense that we regret or we feel guilty for something that we have done. Shame is not that. Shame is when we hear someone else or society tells us that something we have done is wrong. And I think it's really valuable to see the times when guilt and shame align and maybe people in society are telling you this thing is wrong and you also have an internal sense that this thing is wrong, versus the times where we feel secure and supported, no regret, no guilt, but everyone around us might be giving us this narrative of shame. This kind of shame spiral and these external expectations on me led to me blaming myself in the relationship so much. Anytime I acted out of character or I was acting out in the relationship, acting crazy when I go out, asking to open up the relationship, being overly activated, yelling because I wasn't getting my needs met, having breakdowns, being avoidant, being dissociative, having hypomania. I went to really extreme responses. And all of this behavior was so out of character for me. But what the world told me is that I'm just a crazy woman having to break down. And a lot of even my closest friends echoed the same narrative. That shame kept me in a spiral, kept me in self-blame. What I wish I could have known is that my acting out was just a symptom. It was just a response to the bigger issue of the imbalance and incompatibility within my relationship. It was a valid response. It was my body communicating with me, girl, you're acting out of character because this is not correct. Now, does that excuse some of my behaviors that happened at that time?
No.
And I do feel guilt around that. And I've made my peace with that, and I continue to work on that. However, the shame aspect kept me in blame, kept me in freeze, kept me in the state where I thought that I was worthless and I wasn't able to leave the relationship. So whether you see yourself in this, or even if you just see a friend who's maybe been acting out of character or acting toxic in their relationship, maybe take a step back from judging, from shaming, and see their behavior as what it is, a symptom of some level of dissatisfaction. Maybe gently encourage them to get out. I'm not saying that they're not going to be defensive or they're going to be ready to hear that, but I'm saying that that's what I needed at the time. Fortunately though, after I started doing this work on myself in a new way, I did end up getting the courage to file for divorce. I actually asked my ex-husband for a divorce multiple times, and we went round and round and round until finally I was like, you know what? We're not going to come to an agreement on this. I'm just going to file. And I was so scared. I did not make that decision lightly. Not only was I scared of the grief, the striking out on my own after nearly 9 years of partnership, but I was so scared of the logistics, how I was going to afford things, how I was going to break my lease and take care of the dogs when I worked full 12-hour days. I was also terrified of the aftermath, right? The judgment, the shame, the expectations that I had already been feeling so heavily throughout the relationship. I expected that to get a million times worse when I got a divorce. But when I finally did it, all of it was worth it. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you everything was hunky-dory and everything worked out for me and everyone was understanding and nobody judged me. Because it actually didn't go like that at all. There were people that judged me harshly on the internet, but that means less to me because, no offense, but y'all literally don't know the ins and outs of my life at all. There were people in my family that judged me. There were people in my friend group that judged me. Actually, my entire friend group that I had solidly for years ended up breaking down and completely falling apart because of, partly I believe, of my divorce. I lost a lot of friendships, a lot of couple friends that we saw all the time. The dynamic just didn't work anymore. And that was so painful. I felt everyone's resentment for me. I felt like everyone was blaming me for upsetting these dynamics. And honestly, some people were projecting on me 100 million%. A lot of girls that I would kind of lament with, and we would all complain about our partners together. A lot of those girls that I had that kind of relationship with, they completely iced me out, projected so much shit on me because truly, they resented me for doing the thing that they could never do. All of that was so painful in the aftermath of my divorce. I cried about it for weeks and months. But what made everything, all of that pain, all of that judgment that I was feeling so worth it was the aftermath that I saw on an individual level. When I got a divorce, I lost 40 pounds. I didn't try to do that. I wasn't trying to get a revenge body or anything like that. I was just living my life exactly as I had in the relationship. The weight just fell off. I felt immediately lighter, healthier, free. Oh my God, the severe level of inflammation that I had within my relationship, gone. My body instantly responded to me and told me, girl, this is what we've been waiting for. We needed the safety to drop all of the extra padding we had around you to try to keep you so safe. My PCOS and endometriosis symptoms, I mean, they are down by 75-80%. It is insane the level of correlation that I personally experience between chronic illness, chronic pain, and leaving my relationship. And not only that, but emotionally, all of a sudden, I felt like I had space mentally. I felt like I had time to do things. I felt free and I felt myself and I felt so relieved that I didn't have to resign myself to the bleak future that I saw within my marriage. Ultimately, if you're watching this, I just want you to understand every single thing that I was afraid of, the judgment, the logistics, the grief of it. I was completely capable of handling it. And I think you are too. If you're carrying the weight of the relationship, especially if you feel that imbalance, that is your capacity. All of that capacity is going to open up for you, and you're going to be able to do it on your own. I wish I would have known that I was completely capable of doing those things by myself, because I already was. I was already doing everything on my own. I just wasn't realizing it, and I wasn't naming it. I was so caught up in the familiarity and the comfortability of such a long-term relationship that I was not seeing reality. It's like I was in this freezing cold ocean, and I had my favorite, like, warmest mink coat wrapped around me, and I was freezing, and I was so scared to take off this coat because I thought if I did, then I would freeze to death. Little did I know it was wearing that coat in the ocean that was the thing that was drowning me. And once I took off that coat, girl, I swam right to shore. And everything that was waiting on me there was like a sauna, a box combo from Raising Cane's, my curly girl hair routine, and a new, extremely emotionally intelligent partner. I had also gotten to the point when I filed for divorce that I was so happy with myself and feeling so free of the relationship that I was like, I never need a man ever again. You could hear in that initial clip that I filmed the morning after, I was like, I'm happy to date and connect and especially explore my queerness, but girl, I don't need anyone. And I think approaching dating that way really led to me finding success. And in true bisexual woman fashion, I did find a cute little gamer, and he is so sweet. And I can't think of any imbalances that we have in our relationship because I was so intentional in identifying them and repairing them if I see them. My long-term relationship and my marriage taught me so much and really prepared me to be in the amazing relationship that I'm in today. But there were so many points that I could have cut off that suffering for myself, and I wish that I would have been able to see myself in the way that my body was screaming out to me way sooner than I did. Now you know everything about why I got a divorce in my 20s and what I learned, and I hope it could help just one person. That would be gratifying enough for me. Also, now that you guys know this stuff, hopefully the speculation on gossip sites, on Reddit, will come to a close. Let this be a lesson to you that if you watch videos of someone on the internet, you truly have no idea what's going on in their life and relationships. And hopefully this can dispel some of that black and white thinking that I was seeing as there was speculation in the end of my relationship. I swear there was like no nuance. It was like people believed that someone had to have cheated, and someone even said after I opened up a little bit in my Q&A that I had abuse allegations against my ex-husband, which is not true at all. Just because a woman feels miserable, blamed, and gaslit in a relationship does not mean that there are abuse allegations. Now, when you go forward seeing other people's relationships and your own relationship, hopefully you can see the nuance, and it's not just like perfect, healthy relationship, hashtag couple goals, or cheating and abuse allegations. Like, I would say probably 95% of the time, relationships lie somewhere in the middle where it's just two people's protective patterns clashing. And that doesn't mean anyone is a bad person. We're all just people doing our best with what we learned about love, but that doesn't mean that you have to stay in your unhappy relationship. So that's gonna be it. I hope you guys enjoyed some of this insight. I know this is not my typical content at all, but seriously, I'm gonna keep saying it if I reach one person. And if one person sees themselves in my experience, I will be happy. That's why I made this. I'm also thinking of making follow-ups to this video if you guys want to know more. If you want to fill the comments with questions, I can do another Q&A specifically about this. If you want to hear about more books that helped me through the process, fiction and nonfiction, I can make that video. And if you guys want to hear about my new relationship and what I've prioritized in dating after divorce, I can make that video as well. Just let me know what you guys would be interested in. Thank you guys so much for listening to my story, watching this video, hanging out with me. If you like this video, give it a like. For all of my past regret of self-blame, think of that hurting version of me and give her a like, okay? I feel like Sarah McLachlan on an ASPCA commercial, okay? Look at that sad girl in that 6-minute clip and give her a little like. And if you want to hear me talk about books, vlog my life, hang out with me as I make more of these lifestyle kind of videos, then you can also subscribe. I will invite you to do that if you wish, but no pressure. Thank you so much again for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.